guys, welcome to Gray Squadron Gaming. We're here at Gencon. I've got Will Shick with us, the creator, or the lead developer and creator of Shatterpoints.
So lead designer. The developers are a great team that turned my ramblings into actual rules.
Perfect.
So I don't want to take that away from them.
That's fair.
Because they have the hardest job on earth. They have to take my mad scrawlings, and I'm like, it must do this, and then they have to be like, how do I make this into a technical rules text? And I'm like, you can do it, and then I run away.
Perfect. There was a little bit of news at Mini Extravaganza for Legion.
Yeah. Oh, a tiny bit.
Just a little shake-up.
An amuse-bouche, one might say.
So I think the first question is, how has the reception been on your guys' end? What have you been hearing so far from the community?
I think after the initial, shock and awe period, which we kind of expected would happen with the big announcement, right? Like, there were a lot of changes. It was a very large rebalance. As we talked about at Mini Strav, that was the culmination of 3 years of work, right? And so it just turned from like, holy cow, this is wild, we're in a brand new world, to people starting to play games and really starting to love it. And so that was super gratifying and obviously a huge relief, right? You never know. We had a wonderful group of testers who were with us that whole time, giving feedback, all composed of people who've been playing and loving Legion since it launched. So when they were having a lot of fun and being really happy with it, that was definitely the moment where we were like, okay, I think we're on to something really good. We were loving it internally. And so to see that kind of go out to the greater community and see the response and see people really posting up, once everybody started diving into list building and what they could do now and how they were going to do this and how they were going to react to these missions and speculating for the future, it was an energy that I think we hadn't seen in a little while from the Legion community. And so to know that our work had led to that kind of resurgence, it was, you can't ask for any more as somebody who makes games. Our goal here is to, create things that people have fun and are excited about and that give them that lift from normalcy, right? Yeah. Normal everyday stuff. So I've been super thrilled. It's been wonderful. I don't think it could have gone any better. It's been awesome.
I would say I agree completely. There was a little bit of that, something's new, something's crazy.
Well, there was some pretty wild, divergent things, right? That we did. So
we had a couple episodes come out. I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch it.
Yeah, I did. The second they popped up, I was like, let's watch this. I heard that you had a vote, and Clones versus Separatists won first, and then you finally got out, the Rebels versus the Imperials. They were fun to watch, and I also was like, I'm not going to comment in the rules about what you got right, what you got wrong, but you guys did really great.
A few misplays, but overall,
it's going to happen. Everyone makes mistakes, right? Yeah. It's just like I have the ability from home to check the rules and be like, was that right? I think you did them awesome, and it was really fun to watch your excitement and everything. So. Yeah, it was great.
There's definitely this new, fresh energy. I think most of the community would agree.
Yeah,
it's not just like one new unit. It's like we get to build differently with 1,000 points. Mm-hmm. The cover mechanic makes small dice pools really meaningful.
Yeah,
that's probably been my favorite change. Has been the cover. So you have that 10 dice attack, huge dice. You could save 4 or 5 in heavy. Well, the small dice can save 1 or 2 still, or get all 3 through. It's kind of nice.
That was, I think when we took over kind of the ownership of the game, right? One of the things we really ran into very fast in talking about how do we go next, where do we go next for Legion? How do we create some exciting and different designs and do things that are going to continue, to build up the game, was that the dice variants and limitations of how cover worked and how those dice pools could be, right? You were really talking about 4 to 6 dice depending on colors and a couple of keywords. And if you went either beyond or below that, it was a meaningless attack or it was a completely overpowered attack.
Sure.
So that was something that the dev team really dove in hard on, did a lot of different mathematical charting, probability statistics. The joke is that we base everything on what it takes to remove the average 6 trooper unit of stormtroopers. Okay, and so we murdered a lot of stormtroopers.
You should.
You would push the analyze button on the little spreadsheet that Ben built, and it would be like, this many stormtroopers are dead. And we're like, it's not enough. More. And then it was too much, and we had to draw it back. But yeah, so cover was a huge one. I think for me, the mission updates was a big one, right? We really wanted to. We watched, I think, over 80 hours of film on high-level competitive play from all the various tournaments and events to really understand how do people play the game? What is the meta? How are people approaching it? And then taking that info and going and looking at community chatter and saying, okay, what are the things that people are struggling with or finding frustration with, or what is not really delivering on the promise of Legion? And figuring out that Turn Zero was just too impactful, right? there were too many things that if they either went not your way or you weren't prepared for because you didn't know them, they had an overall like negative skew on the game.
Yeah.
And they made a lot of things, it wasn't living up to, I think, the narrative and the dynamism that everyone wants from Legion, right? You want Turn Zero to matter, absolutely. You want good planning and strategic like notions and everything to be part of the game, but you don't want them to be the whole game, right?
Exactly.
You want player skill at the table, you want randomness and dice to be important, and you want those abilities for players to have big plays or to have big comebacks. And so that was really how we approached, the mission design and what we were trying to do, and how do we kind of amend that.
Yeah.
And that definitely took a lot of iterations, a lot of discussion. The secondary missions were a great later inclusion.
I like the secondary missions a lot. I really do. They're one of my favorites.
What we found during our testing, right, was that the primary missions were really doing the job, but there were a lot of times where players were like, okay, but it's kind of boring, right? Because there's nothing else for me to do. I know, like, we're both playing the same game. A lot of the games were kind of neck and neck until the end, and one person would eke it out. And so we started talking about these ideas, pulling from other games on the market and things that we had experienced and liked. Like, could we do a secondary mission system? I've always been a huge fan of, really, really way back in the day, there was a secret mission system in the biggest miniatures game in gaming, right? And so you'd get these cards and you wouldn't show them to your opponent. Mm-hmm. And they would be like things like, eliminate a unit or get into your opponent's deployment zone. And you could play them and be like, oh, I scored these points and you didn't know it. So the idea that there are these other things that kind of force players out of their comfort zone and make you dynamically react on the fly, or maybe be like, okay, I'm losing the battle on this front, but if I overcommit to this like secondary objective, I can get the boost I need to pull out the win.
Yeah.
And so we really started exploring that, and that's where a lot of the flavor and interesting, like the unique things in the mission started to come from. So I was really happy with where that turned out.
They turned out great.
Seen a lot of people respond well to it. Obviously, this is just the foundational mission set, so there's lots more to come as players get comfortable with it, and we can build on it. Right? It's not like you got 18 cards and we're out, kids. Like, we're done. we got another 5 to 10 years of stuff that we want to build on and iterate on. And that includes both, the balanced competitive side and the more casual and fun side, right? Like doing more asymmetric narrative missions and things like that you wouldn't necessarily take to a Worlds.
Yeah.
But also just making sure that mission deck is dynamic, that there's a lot of player choice. One of the things that we've discussed is a kind of a spoiler that's probably a few years in the making, is we want to do faction-specific advantages. Right? So right now all the advantages they're generic, right? They go to everyone. But obviously that system absolutely opens itself up for Rebels have 2 or 3 unique advantages that you can choose from. Imperials have their unique advantages.
Play with that faction theme a little bit,
play with that faction identity and themes, and open up more of the idea that the choice of faction that you make influences everything that you do, right? Like your play style, your options and opportunities, all that stuff. And so when you're a Rebel player, you can really feel like a Rebel player. When you're a clone player, you can really feel like a clone player, that kind of thing.
That's great.
So there's lots of things in the works that we're talking about, planning on, and I'm excited for where it's going to go from here as we continue to build up.
Yeah.
And move forward in the 2.7, I think, version we're on now.
Yeah.
It was 2.6. I like the 260 moniker,
260, I like that.
260 was pretty good, but now we're in 270.
I was trying to name the new Legion videos, and I was like, I don't want a 2.0 because we're at 2.5 and now 2.6. So I just called it New Legion for now.
New Legion.
For now.
And that's another really interesting thing about, we took over, as everyone knows, right? We took over stewardship of these games. But one of the things that was really, I think, parallel development is that we've always been true believers in versioning, right? Like in incremental rebalancing and changes. Why wait 5 years under something that you don't think works well so that you can new edition it, throw out everything before it, and make people buy all the new stuff, right?
Yep.
I played games under that system. I think that system has its merits, but our goal was always, can we make something that's a living, breathing system, right?
Sure.
I always talk about gardening. People get tired of it. I talk about cooking. But the idea that you can tend the garden and you can actively grow and develop it without having to tear everything up and start all over again.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
And so the fact that FFG was kind of on that parallel thing with their versioning, right? They've been doing the same thing: points adjustments, balance erratas, updates, right? Which is how we were already at 2.5 when we did the core rule book.
Yep.
That really jived with how we've approached everything, and all of our games have had that. And so that's kind of like the big thing is it's, yes, I think this 0.1 adjustment from 2.5 to 2.6, it was huge. But so much of it was based on the fact that everything was kind of interconnected, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't really do an effective unit rebalance without doing a mission rebalance, without doing core rule adjustments.
You would make something broken if you didn't have it all at once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it happened to be a very big versioning shift, and probably should have jumped to 3.0 on the versioning, but we gave it a tenth of a point, I guess. It's fine, whatever. Yeah. But so that's kind of the idea, right? Is that things may transition in and out of the game through becoming banned or restricted or whatever, right? As we've seen, that's important. We have to be able to prune things, but the goal is that the vast majority of your collection is going to continue to be viable, and it's going to continue to be evolved and updated in ways that are meaningful. And that's not shaking the snow globe just to shake the snow globe, right? Like, we've talked about this a little bit on other casts and stuff at length, but just coming in and being like, well, what an easy way is to shake up the meta is just rejigger all the points, right? Just start throwing darts at the wall, and then everyone's like, oh, we got to figure this out. And then once they get close to figuring it out, do it all again. Yep. That is a way to keep things fresh and interesting, but our goal is, stable, healthy meta and growth. Sure. And so if we're doing our jobs well, we may have to come in and adjust certain things, here or there. But the goal is that the overall environment, the overall balance and everything is close enough and healthy enough that players will naturally do that, right? Yeah. Where one player presents a question that the community is not prepared for, another player will go off, think tank it, and come up with the answers within the system.
Counter it, yep.
Yeah, and if you can do that, and if we can achieve that through our vigorous testing and kind of our small tweaks and touches where needed, then I think it creates an overall system where everyone's more confident in what they're putting their time and hobby effort into is going to continue to have value. No one's going to be surprised by it. And we can move forward in a way that's really going to grow Legion and make it the greatest game it can be.
Good. The one thing that I was asked to ask you was, and we talked about in the end of our episode one, was the fire support change. Big change in fire support, right? From our standpoint, even though I was a clone player and loved it, I love that you changed it because you were able to give other units a little bit more of a boost that they should have had. Mm-hmm. Like Anakin, for example, is a beast now that you maybe couldn't have done before because you always had this threat to bounce around of this giant fire support. Yeah, is that fair?
It effectively came down to, yes. I mean, the big problem with fire support, right, is that it absolutely put fire support and exemplar, put clones into a box that you couldn't break out of. Like, even with the new cover system, even with everything else, the reality of it is that it restricted everything that we could do that we thought was cool. All of the designs we were looking at, from what do we want to do with Padawan Ahsoka Tano or Commander Ahsoka Tano, what do we want to do with Clone Marksman. Clone Marksman were a huge one, where we're like, we want to reimagine clones so that you're not splitting between Phase 1 and Phase 2. Because I know as a player who has a clone army, I only like Phase 2 helmets. I don't like Phase 1 helmets. Yeah. It's not my thing. So the fact that I'm kind of forced into having Phase 1 helmets with my Phase 2s, I was like, naturally, I'm just not going to take Phase 1s. Now I'm missing out on a huge part of the army. Definitely. Because from a hobbyist perspective, I don't want that. I want a cohesive thing. So that was part of the impetus, is that we're just going to remove this arbitrary separation, create this new kind of balance within the clone core infantry. But even at that point, even before we got to that, we're like, well, what's missing? Clone Marksman would be cool, seeing them with the full-size DC-15 blasters, like we see in Episode 2 and in some of the early versions of early episodes of the Clone Wars. Yeah. But you can't give clones a long-range unit with fire support being what it was. No, you cannot. Because it was monstrous. And so at that point you're just like, okay, we keep running into these bumps. And then you talk about things like Exemplar and Anakin. Well, what does that turn Anakin into? If the most efficient way to run Anakin is as a token battery for everyone else, I don't care how badass you make him, like, it's still, by the math, better for him to sit back and just hand out his tokens. Right? Sure. And Padme kind of suffered from the same thing. So instead what we did is we kind of rethought fire support, right? And how could we make it effective but not a thing that absolutely destroyed the math in a way that said you can never do X, Y, or Z, right? We don't like those things typically. We like to have as much sandbox to play in as we can, because even though the sandbox is really big in design and development, there are edges, right? But why artificially bring those edges closer to you if you don't have to?
One of my favorite examples is the Saber Tank surges to hit now.
Yeah.
That's so much better, but I don't think you could do it before.
No, you absolutely could.
There's no way. So
when we were doing our balance repass and coming up with ideas on how we wanted to fix things, right? There were things like that where it was just like, well, the Saber Tank kind of underperforms. Yeah. But the second that you make it perform the way it should, you've broken everything. Yep. Because now it's just going to get fire. It's going to be the fire support battery. Yeah, 100% would have. You run into that stuff over and over again, and it's like, okay, a significant change needs to be made. And I think, from what I've seen and everything, like ideally, We've gotten to a place with the clones after a lot of work and a lot of revision and a lot of feedback where they do play differently.
They do.
Right? The old tactics are no longer there. But the new tactics, I believe, and I hope as we see more games played, will make up for that. And then as we're able to add new tech and kit to them that we would have never been able to add before, we're going to see that grow and thrive in a way that I think before, right, it was very stagnant. There was very much, in all the factions, there were optimal ways to play. In clones, it really felt like there was one way to play. And so now, ideally, we're in a brand new world where people are going to find, more options and opportunities. The fact that the ISP is, I think, on a verge of greatness that we've never seen before is very exciting.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. The one thing I wanted to ask you about that you mentioned on the administrative games, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're going to release the upgraded cards, if you updated cards and phases, ending roughly around Adepticon.
Yeah.
The question we kept getting in our comments, and we don't know, and I don't know if you can answer, is that will there be any in between now and Adepticon that will come out too, like more print and play cards, or is that all going to come at towards the end of that?
So,
or do you know?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that this initial batch, right, effectively where we are is that we have finished the development work on all of the updates, or we're in the process of wrapping it all up, right? So all of the cards are moving to the new templating. That's required so that we can do the multilingual stuff that we talked about, make sure that the global support chain is there, that everybody can have these products in their localized languages, that we can make it efficient and cost effective for everyone. So everything's getting updated to the new format.
Yeah.
Some of those things that weren't touched in this balance pass do have adjustments. So, for example, characters like Lando and Callus will have some balance passes to them.
That's good.
Another new spoiler for you there.
I'll take it.
That second part of the balance pass, though, will likely come out when those card decks come out.
Okay.
And so that will happen in the summer of next year. And effectively where we were at, right, is that we were finalizing the process. We were very happy with where we were at. We were ready to go to print. But that was literally back in May, right? In May, we were done. We were like, we're great. We've hit our dates. We're ready to go. So in a year, right, because that's what the manufacturing process takes, we're going to have this product. We're going to be able to start sending it out. But we knew basically where the community was, where the game was at, that waiting that extra year, especially because, as we talked about in Mini-Strav, right, so much of our effort was going into this massive rebalance and prepping Legion for the next steps of its future, that we couldn't do as much from the new edition stuff or from the new release stuff, right, as we wanted to. So we have seen a slowdown on the number of new units that have been coming out because, we only have so much time and energy from our playtesters, from our devs and everything else, that we had to figure out where those levels were.
Yeah.
And so our big thing was that our goal here was, if we release it now, right, we can reinvigorate the community, we can show them what's coming in the future, we can really get that energy back, address a lot of the things, make people's current collections much more exciting, right, because there's a huge rebalance that people have been asking for forever.
Yeah.
And get all of that, that original stuff up to modern standards, where we've seen with new units and stuff. And from there, right, we can move forward, and once that product comes out and the cards are in print and everything, the players don't have to wait, right? Yeah. And we can not have another 7 to 8 months of folks kind of consistently going under the existing situations. And so that was a big part of it, was just understanding that we really wanted to bring the community back into that place and to really reinvigorate and energize everything that's going on, freshen it up.
Yeah.
While also, doing so as fast as possible with the knowledge that, I think it's better overall, right, to have the cards now than to wait for a year and to finally have them in print. And the option will be there for both, right? And obviously mileage varies on people's opinions on that, but that was really one of the big things. And we didn't necessarily hit that as much as we probably should have at Mini-Strav, but the idea is that it wasn't like this stuff was done a year ago and we were just like, let's not print it.
Yeah.
The reality is it was completed, wrapped, and done a couple months ago, right in time for it to go to print, and we were like, let's not wait for print. Let's bring this to the community now, because we really think the community deserves it, needs it, and we're very excited to get it out.
Perfect. We're excited to have it. The game feels much fresher, feels new. I've been urging people to try it a few times, and they'll feel it.
Yeah.
The cover mechanic, we've got a lot of interesting people talking about Turn 1 doesn't exist. It exists big time, especially with things like Scout and Infiltrate and Prepared, right? So really, it's really good. We're really looking forward to more changes coming, and I want to thank you very much for your time.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much for everything you do. Really appreciate the battle reports. Let Ross know. He'll get us back on. We can get a Pagani or somebody else as well.
Perfect.
We love chatting about this stuff.
No, thank you. We love having you on. Have a great con.
You too. Perfect.
Thanks.